Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Prahlad and I'm a computer engineer working in Kathmandu. In this video, we're going to talk about design patterns using software engineering. Specifically, we're going to focus on Singleton design pattern. I'll be using Java as the primary language, but this tutorial is not language specific, so the ideas of this design pattern can be implemented in any other programming language as well. So let's begin with the introduction of design patterns. So if you don't know what a design pattern is, so it's a set of principles that helps us to speed up the development process of software application by providing a well-tested, proven development and design process. So all the design patterns are just a representative of ideas, all right? It's not a particular implementation. So the singleton design pattern is one of the simplest design patterns used in software engineering. The idea is to have a single instance of class and use that instance to perform all of its operation. In other words, we restrict the instantiation of class to one object only. So whenever we create a class and we want to instantiate or create an object of that class, we are restricted to create object up to one number only. So we cannot create more than one object of that class. Such class or the such design pattern is known as singleton design pattern. So we're going to focus on that pattern today, and I'm going to show you a basic example in Java. Okay, so let us suppose. So by the way, I'm using IntelliJ IDE as my main code editor. Okay, so if you don't know about this IDE, you can source that in YouTube and you can download it through their official website. Okay, uh, so let us begin by creating a simple class. Okay, let's call it a normal class. All right, so let's create a normal class. Uh, so let's have a constructor. And again, I'm assuming that you are familiar with the basic terminology of Java, and not only Java, you know the basic terminology of any object-oriented programming language, since all the ideas are same. And if you know Java, it will be a plus point in this tutorial. Okay, so let me know if you want to learn about Java and if you want tutorial like this regarding the Java language. Okay, so let's have a class of a method. Let's call it print hello, which will take one argument name, and it will print. And again, I've used a shortcut. Okay, that is s out. If I write s out and press enter, this IDE will automatically write or generate system.out.println. So it will enhance my development time. Okay. Uh, so there are a bunch of shortcuts that I'm going to use in this tutorial and in upcoming tutorials using this IDE, and I'll list all the shortcuts in the screen below. Okay, so let's print hello and then the name with exclamation. Okay, so this is our normal class. Okay, and if we create a driver class where we'll have our main method, okay, let's call it a driver. Okay, uh, so here I'll create a main method, and again in IntelliJ IDE, if you write main and press enter, it will automatically create a main method for you. Okay, and let's create an object of normal class. Let's call it normal class 1 equals new normal class. Okay, and let's okay, so first of all, let's create two strings. Okay, name one, that is okay, let's call it YouTube, and the next string name two, let's call it Sam. All right, and now let's call the print hello method of normal class. uh, let's pass name one in it. Okay, and also we want to print something like, okay, so object, let's call it normal class 1, and we'll print the object. So if you notice, I'm printing the object, and this class doesn't have a toString method. Okay, so it will print the object reference, and again from the driver class, if you press Control in Windows and Linux, or Command in Mac, and then press the class name, you'll be so this ID will take you to that specific class. All right, so let's again copy the same code. All right, and this time I'm creating the next object, that is normal class 2, and I'm calling the print hello method of normal class 2, and then let's print the object normal class 2, and let's see if normal class 1 and normal class 2 are two different objects or not. All right, so let's run it. Okay, so you can see the output here. So it says hello YouTube, and for the second one, let's pass name 2 instead of name 1 so that it will be easier for us to differentiate. And I'll run it again. And again, the shortcut for running any program is Control Shift or F10, Control Shift and F10, or simply Shift and F10. Okay. Uh, so you can see our program ran successfully, and you can see here, so hello YouTube. Okay, and the object normal class 1, it's in design pattern package in normal class, that's the class name, and the object reference is 1540E19D. And you can see hello Sam, that's the print hello method of next object of the same class, normal class, but you can see the object reference is different, right? So hence, we can conclude that these are two different objects, right? And in some cases, we just want a class to have only one object, okay, not more than one object. So, for example, when you want to do a database connection, you want only one object to talk with the database instead of multiple objects floating around and talking with the same database and making changes to a same database. You just want one instance of an object to perform its operations, right? So in that case, we generally use singleton pattern. Okay, uh, so there are again two methods you can implement singleton pattern. Okay, the first one is orderly initialization, where you initialize an object before in the compilation before running the program, and in the lazy initialization, you only initialize a class when you need it. Okay, so in orderly initialization, you just initialize a class at the time of class loading, whether you need the class or not. But in lazy initialization, you will just initialize a class when you actually need it. Okay, so let's begin with orderly initialization. So let's call it my orderly uh, singleton class. Okay, so my early singleton class is a singleton class in which we are going to implement singleton class by using early initialization method. Okay, so first of all, let's start by creating a private member. Okay, private static. You want to create a static because you don't want to create an object of this class in order to access this member. So let's create it as static. Let's call it instance. Okay, and at the time of class loading, what you do is you just create an object. Okay, you create an object at the time of class loading, and you store that object in instance. Okay, so as you know that in object-oriented programming concept, if you know that, then we know while creating an object, it will call the default constructor, right? So let's create a default private constructor for this class. Okay, it will be empty. Let's call it private default constructor. Mm, So we are creating this constructor, and the access modifier is private because we don't want any other class to create multiple instances of our class. Okay, so if we create constructor as private, now this constructor is only accessible by this class, but not from other classes. Okay, so other class cannot create objects of our class. All right, so they cannot create objects by using new keyword. Okay, so if anyone tries to do new and then my early singleton class, they will get an error. All right, so we should find a way. So let's suppose there is the same method. Okay, I'll copy this method and I'll paste it here. So there is some functionality provided by my early singleton class, and we want our users to access this print hello method. Okay, but if we use this private constructor, they cannot create an object, and without creating an object, they cannot call this method because it is also not static, right? So how to give them our object? Okay, how to give the users the object of my early singleton class? Okay, but ensuring that they can access the same object all the time. That meaning that they cannot access or they cannot create multiple objects of our class. Okay, so in order to do that, we can create a static method. Okay, so we don't want our user to have an object of this class in order to call this method, so we are using static keyword here. Okay, so if you are confused about static keyword and if you want to learn more, please write in the comment section so that in the next video I can create a video specifically for static keyword and all the basics of Java. Okay, but for this video, I'm assuming that you already know these little things about Java language. Okay, uh, so let's call so I will actually return an instance of my early singleton class, and I'll call this method as get instance. So it will return this instance. Okay, uh, so now I'll be returning this instance. So what's happening here is whenever we load the class, my early singleton class, we will create an object. Okay, uh, so we will create an object, my early singleton class, and then while we are calling getInstance method, we are returning the same instance of our class. So we are ensuring that only one the same object is being used by any program that is calling getInstance method of our class. Okay, so let's test it quickly. So here is an example of normal class, right? So now, okay, so instead of normal class, I'll again create my early singleton class, and I'll create this object. Okay, so I'll create a new class. So if you see here, if I try to create a new singleton class here, I'm getting an error. And if you see the error, it says that, okay, let me go to the error. Okay, so it says that my early singleton class has private access to design patterns dot my early singleton class. Okay, so it has private access to the constructor of this class. That's why we cannot instantiate an object from the driver class. Okay, so in order to get access, we just write here my early singleton class dot get instance. So get instance method will get called and it will return the instance. Okay, since we already have an object stored in instance variable, we'll just return that variable. All right, so now we're ensuring that we are giving the objects to other users rather than other users creating an object of our class. Okay, so I can do is print hello method and provide name one, and also let's print so object, I'll copy this one quickly. All right, so I'm printing the object so that we can verify whether the two objects are same or not. So this is the second object. Okay, I'll call it my early singleton class 2, and let's print it out, and let's give the name as name 2. Okay, so if we save it and if we run it, okay, so here's our output. If we see the output, you can see hello YouTube. So this is a normal class, and you can see the object signature of two objects are different. That means these are two different objects. But in case of my early singleton class, if you see the object signature, it's same. Hence we can conclude that these two objects, my early singleton class 1 and my early singleton class 2, these two variables hold the same object. Okay, so we ensure that we only give access to single object of my early singleton class. Okay, so this method has its own drawbacks, right? For instance, we're creating an object of my early singleton class during class loading, right? So there may be a situation where we may not be using this class at all, right? So in those cases, we're just creating an object and storing it in a variable, right? So it consumes more memory, right? So that's one drawback, but it's easy to implement. Okay, it's about the eager initialization. Okay, so now let's see the lazy initialization. Okay, so let's create an object. So in lazy initialization, we'll create the object if the user needs it, rather than creating the object while loading classes. All right. So let's call it so my lazy singleton class. Okay. So it's quite similar to the eager singleton class. We'll be having our same variable, private static uh, my lazy singleton class instance, right? And we also will be having a default constructor, and we should again give private so that we are restricting other users or users from other programs to create an object of my lazy singleton class by themselves. Okay, and let's copy this method. Okay, so there is print hello method here as well. Okay, so it has some functionality. Now we should return. So let's create a static method, okay, which will return my lazy singleton class instance, and let's call it get instance. So now we just cannot directly return instance, right? Because we haven't created an object yet. It will give null pointer exception because there is no any object in instance variable. So in this case, what we do is we check first of all if the instance is null or not. Okay, we're checking first of all whether our instance is null. So if it is the first time that user is calling get instance method, then our instance will be null, and at that case we'll just create a new object of my lazy singleton class and store it in instance variable, and then we'll return the instance. And the second time, let's suppose for the second or third time, okay, so if the user is calling get instance method, so at the second or upcoming times the instance will not be null. That means we'll just return the same instance. Okay, so that's the idea of lazy singleton class. So if you see here, during the time of class loading, this method won't be called, so hence we are not creating any objects, right? But in early singleton class, as you can see, during the time of class loading, we are just creating a new object right away, right? So that's the difference between early singleton class and lazy singleton class. Okay, so let's go to our driver program. Okay, let's write a few code here. Okay, so I'll be creating an object, and again, if you see here, if I try to create a new object, you can see the error. Okay, if you read the error, it reads like, okay, so my lazy singleton class has private access to my lazy singleton class, so hence object cannot be created, right? So in order to get the object, we should call get instance method. So now after calling the get instance method, our object will be created, right? And the instance will be returned here. So now let's try to so let's give the name as 1. Okay, so let's print hello and give name 1 as our parameter. Let's print object my lazy singleton class 1 is my lazy singleton class 1, and let us copy this code and paste it again. So this will be our second object, the second variable, which will be storing the same object, and let's give the name as name2. Okay, so I think everything is okay. So let's try to run our program. Fingers crossed. Okay, you can see the output. So if I zoom into the output, you can see, so this is of normal class, and you can see two different objects, right? And in early singleton class, you can see the same object, and in case of lazy singleton class, you can also see the same object. So hence we concluded that, so this is the singleton pattern, that is we can create only one instance of object of any certain class. Okay, so such class is known as singleton class, and this design pattern is known as singleton design pattern in software engineering. So this pattern is mainly used while connecting to the database. Okay, so talking about Java, so we have Java runtime. So Java runtime is a singleton class. Okay, so in order to get more info about this, you can visit websites like Geek for Geeks. So these are very good websites for learning computer science. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up button, and if you want to see this kind of videos, please subscribe to this channel. That's all for today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.